Hello, this is your host Simon Rushton, and today we have Taxi Chronicles. We have a lady who's an expert in, well, I'm going to let this lady tell you about the coronavirus and how it works and what her job entails.
Okay, hi. I work in the labs where we're currently testing people for coronavirus. Um, Basically, in terms of transmission, it only takes a few particles that you are exposed to for you to breathe it in, and it begins to affect the body. Once breathed in, your lungs are affected. Your lungs are affected because your lungs are lined by epithelial cells. These are just cells that allow the lungs to do what they need to and allows good functioning. The COVID-19 virus will attach itself to the epithelial cells and it injects its DNA into the epithelial cells. When that happens, the body realizes that there is something wrong with these cells and it sends immune cells to attack the infected cells. You have two types of immune cells that do this. You have the killer T cells, which cause the epithelial cells to commit suicide. They call it apoptosis. And you have neutrophils, which damage the epithelial lining, and they don't discriminate between healthy cells and infected cells, because as the cells commit suicide, all of the viral DNA is released into the lung and is then able to affect even more of the nearby epithelial cells. The body then becomes overwhelmed and it becomes very confused. It can't tell between healthy cells and infected cells, so they just attack everything. This is when the lungs become really badly affected, because now they can no longer function. This is where pneumonia begins to set in. The lungs will start to fill up with water. It becomes very difficult to breathe because the lining has been damaged so much so the branches, they call them alveoli in your lungs, they are now exposed and can be affected accordingly. So if you're no longer able to breathe properly, obviously your oxygen levels are now affected. If your oxygen levels are affected, it means that your organs are not getting the oxygen they need to perform the day-to-day tasks that they need to. Every organ needs oxygen. We need oxygen to live. Our organs need oxygen to be able to function, to be able to produce proteins to keep our body functioning normally. So this is why the coronavirus is so very deadly, because of the way it's able to attach itself, because of the way that it injects its DNA into the cells, and all of the nearby cells get affected so quickly just from a few particles. This is why it's so important to stay at home. It's not just a case of, oh, if someone coughs by you, if someone sneezes by you, if someone breathes and they have the coronavirus and they breathe in your direction, it can be transferred that way. It travels through the air. It doesn't mean that while you're out on the street that it's there in the air just stagnant. But at the end of the day, it takes 14 days to incubate for you. It can take up to 14 days for you to begin to start showing symptoms. If it takes this long, you could be around people that seem to be absolutely fine, and ultimately they are not. So you've now exposed yourself to someone who has the coronavirus. Just because they're asymptomatic and aren't showing symptoms does not mean that they are not suffering with the virus itself. This is why it's very important to stay at home and only leave your home if it is absolutely necessary. I'm not really sure if there's anything more for me to say.
What would you, thanks for that, what would you say is the difference between the flu and the coronavirus? Because a lot of the people now just say, it's just like the flu, I'll be over it, I'm able-bodied. What is the difference?
Right. Okay. Well, the first thing that is the symptoms that it causes. When you have the flu, you tend to have a bit of a stuffy nose. You have a bit of fatigue, maybe a little bit of muscle weakness. You can have a mucousy cough, etc., etc. Now, when it comes to coronavirus, you have a very dry cough. So if anyone's out there and they've got a mucousy cough, the likelihood is it's just a cold. The difference between the flu and the coronavirus is the way in which it infects the cells. When you have the flu, your immune system is able to overpower it because of the viral DNA within the cell itself. The viral DNA of the flu causes mild symptoms that the body, we've been exposed to the flu for years and years and years. Sometimes we show symptoms, sometimes we don't. Because we've been exposed to it so long, we have cells in our body called B memory cells. Our body is able to recognize that particular virus and knows what to do with it. That's why when the flu and stuff like that came out hundreds of years ago, people died similarly to COVID-19 now. We have had many, many years to get used to the different viral strains that influenza causes.
Is that to say what Boris says about allowing the human body to become immune to it through those B cells? Is that correct?
In a sense, yes. But at this time, because we are still trying to figure out how or what the viral DNA is made up of, it's very difficult. This is why people are talking about trying to find various different means in which to combat it in terms of vaccines or the word has lost me now. Vaccines or antiviral medication. But we need to be able to break down the virus itself and do DNA sequencing on the virus to be able to figure out exactly its method of pathology and how exactly it affects it. So yes, ultimately in the future, our memory cells will be able to combat it. But what we also don't know, because COVID-19 was coronavirus was always out there. The problem now is that it has mutated, and this is why we're struggling so badly. The mutations is what's causing the issue. So until we can figure out what mutations occurred, how they occurred, it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to find a way to combat it, let alone naturally, let alone with medications or vaccines.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that information. We have now reached your destination.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.